Somewhere above the Yangtze River, in the summer of 2025, a 2-ton aircraft lifted straight up into the air with nobody inside it. No cockpit, no control stick, no human hands anywhere near it. It rose silently over more than 2,000 swimmers competing in a river crossing festival, hovering, watching, ready to pull someone out of the water if something went wrong. It flew on batteries, and it had already been fully certified, licensed, and cleared by the Chinese government for exactly this kind of job. Now here is the part that should stop you cold. At that exact same moment, the most advanced flying taxi company in the United States still did not hold a single certificate that would let it carry one paying passenger. Not one. Billions of dollars had been poured into the American side of this race. Years of press releases had promised flying taxis were just around the corner. And the company furthest along was still stuck partway through a 5-stage approval process that industry analysts say may not finish until 2027, if it finishes on schedule at all. China was not stuck. China was already flying, not prototypes, not concept renders. Actual, certified, 2-ton aircraft doing actual jobs over actual cities, while the West was still filling out paperwork. So, stay with me, because over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how that happened. How one country built, tested, and certified the world's first 2-ton flying taxi platform, while the biggest names in America and Europe are still years away from doing the same thing. And by the end of this video, you'll understand something most people still get wrong about this entire industry. This was never really a contest over who could build the coolest looking aircraft. It was a contest over who could get a government to say yes first. And right now, there is only one country that has said yes, more than once, on more than one aircraft. If you're new here, this channel breaks down the technology races that barely make headlines, but are quietly deciding who controls the next decade. Hit subscribe now so you don't lose this one halfway through, because the next part is where it gets genuinely wild. Let's get into it. An eVTOL, if you haven't heard the term, stands for electric vertical takeoff and landing. Think of a helicopter's ability to lift straight up off the ground, combined with the efficiency of a small electric airplane once it's cruising. No runway needed, no jet fuel, no deafening rotor blades chopping the air above a city. Just battery packs, electric motors, and enough lift to move a handful of passengers or a couple of tons of cargo quietly and cleanly through the sky. It sounds like science fiction. For more than a decade, it basically was. The idea has been around since roughly the early 2010s, when a wave of startups realized that electric motors, lightweight batteries, and modern flight computers had finally gotten good enough to make vertical flight possible without a jet engine strapped to the roof. Dozens of companies jumped in. Investors poured money in behind them, imagining a future where instead of sitting in traffic for an hour, you'd hop into a quiet electric aircraft on a rooftop pad and land across the city 15 minutes later. The hard part was never really building one that could fly. Plenty of companies managed that within a few years, hovering test aircraft in front of cameras and investors. The actual hard part, the part almost nobody outside the industry appreciates, was convincing a national aviation regulator that the thing was safe enough to carry a stranger who paid for a ticket. Getting a brand new aircraft category certified from scratch means proving with mountains of documentation and thousands of test flights that every motor, battery cell, and backup system will behave exactly as designed even when something goes wrong. That process is where nearly every eVTOL company in the world has gotten stuck. In the United States, that job belongs to the FAA, and the FAA runs new aircraft through a 5-stage type certification process that can take anywhere from 5 to 8 years from the first application to a finished certificate. 2 companies have spent the last several years racing through that gauntlet: Joby Aviation and Archer Aviation. Joby is the furthest along of any American eVTOL company. By early 2026, it had reached stage 4 of 5, and in March of that year, it flew its first aircraft built to the exact specification the FAA had signed off on. That's a real milestone. But even with that progress, independent analysts have put the odds of Joby actually holding a finished type certificate sometime in 2026 at well under half, with a more realistic target sliding into 2027. Archer, meanwhile, remains a stage behind, still working through Stage 3 despite a manufacturing partnership with Stellantis and a launch partnership with United Airlines. And Joby and Archer are the success stories. Lilium, the German company building a sleek 7-seat electric jet, filed for insolvency in November of 2024, and when a second round of financial trouble hit in early 2025, the company was effectively scrapped. Volocopter, once considered Europe's best shot at a certified air taxi, got rescued by new ownership and quietly pivoted away from passenger air taxis towards simpler ultralight aircraft. Supernal, the flying taxi arm backed by Hyundai, paused its program in the fall of 2025 after both its chief executive and chief technology officer departed. Beta Technologies has taken a quieter, more conservative route, focusing first on cargo flights for logistics giant UPS, with plans to scale that cargo network through 2027 before even attempting a passenger variant. Wisk Aero, backed by Boeing, is pursuing something more ambitious than any of its rivals, a fully autonomous eVTOL with no pilot on board at all. But it has been so quiet about its regulatory progress that even industry trackers can't say what stage it's actually reached. Across the whole industry, something like $13 billion has been spent chasing this technology, and as of early 2026, not a single Western company holds a complete set of certificates allowing them to fly a paying passenger commercially. That's not a knock on the engineering. Joby's aircraft has logged hundreds of real test flights. Archer has real airline partners lined up ready to buy. The bottleneck was never the hardware, it was the paperwork, the years of proving safety case by case to a regulator that had never approved anything like this before. Now, let's cross the Pacific, because the picture looks completely different. China's aviation regulator, the Civil Aviation Administration of China, or CAAC, has been moving through this same certification ladder at a pace that has left Western competitors stunned. Part of that speed comes from something the United States and Europe never really built: a coordinated national strategy. Beijing has designated what it calls the low-altitude economy as a formal strategic industry, meaning drones, cargo eVTOLs, and passenger air taxis get treated the way high-speed rail or electric vehicles were treated a decade earlier. State-aligned investment, streamlined regulatory pathways, and local governments actively competing to host test flights and demonstration routes. It's the same playbook that turned China into the world's largest electric vehicle market in under 10 years. Just pointed at the sky instead of the road. Provincial governments have gotten in on it too, competing with each other to build test corridors, low-altitude flight zones, and vertiport infrastructure, essentially bidding for the chance to host the next demonstration flight or the next factory. That kind of coordinated push, regulator, local government, and manufacturer all rowing in the same direction, is exactly the piece the United States and Europe never quite assembled. The first company to prove this approach could work was EHang. Back in October of 2023, EHang's EH216-S became the very first eVTOL aircraft anywhere in the world to receive a type certificate, the aviation equivalent of a green light saying the design itself is safe. A production certificate followed in 2024, confirming the company could actually manufacture these aircraft to a consistent standard. Then, in 2025, EHang secured an air operator certificate, the final piece needed to legally sell tickets. That gave EHang something no company on Earth had achieved before: the complete set of approvals needed to fly paying passengers, autonomously, with nobody at the controls, for sightseeing and tourism routes in cities like Guangzhou and Hefei. The EH216-S is a smaller aircraft, A two-seater weighing under a ton, so it doesn't quite match the 2-ton claim in this video's title, but it proved the model. It proved that a fast, government-backed certification pipeline could take an aircraft from drawing board to paying customer faster than anywhere else on the planet. Passengers in Guangzhou and Hefei can now book a short sightseeing hop the same way you'd book a ride share, except there's an empty seat where a pilot would normally sit. And the aircraft flies itself from takeoff to landing under constant monitoring from the ground. And it set the stage for the company that would do it again, this time at twice the weight, and with cargo missions that put real tonnage into the air rather than just tourists chasing a view. That company is AutoFlight. And its story is where this gets genuinely remarkable. AutoFlight was founded by Tian Yu, the same engineer who built Unique into one of the world's biggest consumer drone makers, before turning his attention to full-sized aircraft. The company runs development out of Shanghai, with additional certification and engineering outposts in Augsburg, Germany and Shenzhen, and it built its safety and airworthiness team around veterans of China's ARJ-21 and C919 commercial jet certification programs, the same regulatory playbook that got China's homegrown passenger airliners into the sky. That pedigree matters because it meant AutoFlight didn't try to reinvent how to prove an aircraft is safe. It applied lessons from full-scale commercial aviation to a brand new category of vehicle, treating certification as the actual product, not an afterthought bolted on once the flying part was solved. While plenty of startups elsewhere spent their energy on sleek designs and flashy investor demos, AutoFlight built its engineering culture around the unglamorous paperwork-heavy discipline that full-sized airliners have always required. And that discipline is exactly what let it move through China's certification ladder faster than almost anyone expected. AutoFlight's core aircraft weighs right around 2 tons. And instead of building one single-purpose flying taxi, the company built one shared airframe and then split it into a family of aircraft depending on the job. There's Carryall, an autonomous 2-ton cargo drone with no cabin and no passengers, designed purely to haul freight. There's Prosperity, the passenger version of that same underlying platform, seating 4 passengers plus a pilot. And there's a dedicated firefighting variant built off the identical airframe. Same bones, 3 completely different careers, the same way an automaker might build a pickup truck and an SUV off one shared chassis. Carryall is the one that's already made history. In March of 2024, it became the world's first eVTOL above 1 ton to receive a type certificate from the CAAC. A production certificate followed in December of that year, and by July of 2025, it had earned its airworthiness certificate and delivered its first unit to a paying customer, giving it the complete trio of approvals needed for real commercial operations. And Carryall isn't sitting in a hangar waiting for photo opportunities. It has flown real offshore resupply missions for oil platforms operated by CNOOC and CITIC. It has carried emergency medicine and agricultural goods across 118 kilometers of mountainous terrain in Guizhou province in under 40 minutes. It stood emergency watch over the Wuhan River Crossing Festival, and in June of 2026, Indonesia's aviation authority validated AutoFlight's Chinese type certificate, making it the first eVTOL in the world to be recognized by a second country's regulator, opening the door to AutoFlight's first overseas commercial market. While Carryall was busy racking up real-world missions, Prosperity, the passenger version of that same 2-ton platform, was quietly setting records of its own. Back in 2023, it flew 250 kilometers in a single hop, a world record distance for an eVTOL at the time. In February of 2024, it completed a demonstration flight across the sea between Shenzhen and Zhuhai, a route that normally takes about 3 hours by car and can be flown in roughly 20 minutes by air. By 2026, Prosperity had moved into the compliance verification phase of its own CAAC type certification, the stage where regulators confirm the aircraft actually performs the way its paperwork claims, flight after flight, under conditions designed to push the aircraft toward its limits rather than showcase its best-case performance. AutoFlight is targeting commercial passenger service on routes like that Shenzhen to Zhuhai, crossing sometime in 2027 or 2028, likely starting with a safety pilot on board before eventually removing the pilot entirely, following the same playbook EHang used with its smaller aircraft. And AutoFlight isn't stopping at 2 tons. In February of 2026, the company unveiled Matrix, a 5.7-ton aircraft nearly triple the weight of its original platform, capable of seating up to 10 passengers in a business-class layout or 6 in a VIP configuration, complete with a lavatory, climate control, and oversized windows. Matrix completed its first full transition flight, the maneuver where an aircraft shifts from vertical liftoff into forward cruising flight and back again, flying right alongside its smaller 2-ton sibling as a demonstration of the whole family working together. By May of 2026, AutoFlight had gone even further, flying a coordinated formation of 3 aircraft at once, 1 5-ton Matrix and 2 of the 2-ton platform, validating that these different-sized aircraft could communicate, share airspace, and operate together as a genuine fleet rather than isolated prototypes. The company describes its own strategy in a simple phrase: from small to big, from cargo to passengers. Build one thing that works, then scale it in every direction the market demands. That expansion isn't staying inside China's borders either. In May of 2026, AutoFlight flew a demonstration flight in Almaty, Kazakhstan, alongside a local aviation partner, and signed a memorandum of understanding covering 50 additional aircraft across its 2-ton and 5-ton product lines. Combined with the Indonesian certificate validation, AutoFlight is quietly positioning itself to be not just China's flying taxi company, but an exporter of certified eVTOL technology to markets that don't have the capacity to build or certify this kind of aircraft themselves. All of that scaling matters because it shows this was never a one-aircraft trick. A single, certified prototype gathering dust in a hangar wouldn't threaten anyone. A whole family of aircraft, ranging from a 2-seat tourist shuttle up to a 10-seat 5-ton people mover, all certified or moving through certification on the same accelerated timeline, is a genuine industry taking shape in real time. So, let's step back and look at the full scoreboard, because this is the part that really matters. As of early 2026, exactly 2 companies on the entire planet hold a complete set of type, production, and operating certificates for a passenger or commercial eVTOL. Both of them are Chinese: EHang for autonomous tourism flights, AutoFlight for autonomous cargo operations, with its passenger aircraft close behind. Meanwhile, America's most advanced program is still working through the middle stages of a process that could stretch years longer. Europe's most promising company has been dismantled, and a second major European contender quietly abandoned the passenger air taxi idea altogether. This wasn't decided by who had the smartest engineers or the sleekest-looking aircraft. Plenty of Western designs are just as capable on paper, and, in some cases, arguably more refined in their cabin design and passenger comfort than anything flying in China right now. What actually decided this race, at least so far, was regulatory infrastructure, the unglamorous invisible machinery of who gets to say an aircraft is safe and how fast they're willing to say it. China built a national strategy, gave its aviation regulator a clear mandate to move fast, and let companies like EHang and AutoFlight fly real missions early, gathering real-world safety data while competitors elsewhere were still running simulations. The United States has deep capital markets and defense contracts to lean on. Europe, according to industry analysts, had neither the state coordination China built nor the private capital depth America has, and it shows in the wreckage of Lilium and the retreat of Volocopter. The aircraft in this story, quiet, 2-ton, and already flying real missions over Chinese cities and coastlines, is proof that the flying taxi era didn't arrive the way most people expected. It didn't arrive with a flashy passenger launch in Los Angeles or Dubai. It arrived quietly, over a river in Wuhan, over an oil platform in the South China Sea, over a mountain road in Guizhou, doing unglamorous jobs long before it ever carries a tourist with a camera phone. The bigger question now is what happens next. Does the West close this gap once Joby and Archer finally clear their certifications? Or has China already built such a lead in real-world flight hours, manufacturing experience, and export deals that the advantage becomes permanent? There's a real argument for the second outcome. Every cargo-run AutoFlight flies over open water, every emergency standby mission over a crowded festival. Every mountain delivery in Guizhou generates real flight data that regulators and engineers can learn from, data that companies still stuck in ground testing simply don't have access to yet. Certification, once earned, also isn't the finish line. It's a license to keep flying and keep improving, and China's certified fleets are already doing exactly that, while Western prototypes remain grounded, waiting for sign-off. That's genuinely one of the more interesting open questions in this entire industry right now, and it's exactly the kind of story this channel exists to track. If this broke down something you didn't fully understand before, that's the whole point of this channel. So make sure you're subscribed and you've got notifications on, because the next video digs into what happens when China starts exporting this technology to countries the West assumed would be buying American or European aircraft instead. Drop a comment and tell me whether you think the United States can actually close this gap or whether this race is already over. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.